Good evening, Annika and Claire.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Let's wait for the others. It's only two of you. But I mean, I will still teach now, even if there's only two of you. Let me prepare the deck. Okay. Again, I think I can start now. There's three of you now. Hopefully others can join later. But I don't want to waste your time. You came in a bit early. So sige, I'll start na lang. And again, thank you for joining me. I think the three of you always attend. So really, really grateful for that. I know that people may be really busy these days, no, but so hopefully we can get more. Pero it's their loss anyway. I'm recording this, so it's for their own. If they want to refer to the recording, that's fine. Okay, so just a few announcements. Same as last week. Can cover module 4 until the end of April. No, it's the longest module. No? So as I mentioned, you can, no, especially with the articles, with the papers, you can share the load. What law students do. They assign readings to people, they summarize and they share. No? So not everyone reads everything, but of course, if you're really interested in the topics, no, then you can, of course, feel free to really cover everything, including the optional resources. And again, assignment 2 and group assignments are in module 4, no, as I discussed last week. Okay, so you've probably seen your grades for the first assignment. Grades have been posted. Just posting the grading system. No, so less than 70 is still a passing grade. It's 60 to 69. It's less than 50. I don't think anyone got less than 16 um, for this paper. No? So most of you got between C plus and B. No? I'm not sure if I gave anyone an A in this class. So I like to think of B, no, as good, B plus as very good, and A as like wow, diba? Parang something. When I was reading, something caught my eye, and I was really impressed, no, with the way you analyze things, your creativity, your thoughtfulness, no, and the way you wrote up the paper. Go back to the syllabus for rubric. No, there are three things. No, three evaluation criteria for this. No, so it's one is how you organized it. Did you keep repeating things, although they could have been more cohesively organized? The second, organization, I gave 20%. Evaluation, 65%. How you, it's really the analytical work, no? How you diagnose the problems in the community. Were they actually correct? No, because some people made erroneous computations in terms of percentages. No? Um, did you come up with thoughtful interventions as well? And 15% goes to writing. Uh, did you break apart the paragraphs, or was it just rambling, or was it cohesive writing? So those who turned in their assignments late got a 5-point deduction. By the way, it's 5 points for every day that it's late. No? So I count days like if you fail, for example, to submit it from midnight to 11:59 on Sunday, that's already 1 day late. If you still don't submit it midnight until 11:59 on Monday, sorry, kailan ba yung Saturday pala, no? So if you did not pass it the following day until 11:59, even if you submitted it at 12:01, that's already 2 days late. So I'm strict with that, no, because if other people, no, except of course, tell me, no, if you have, you're suffering from COVID or something, tell me, no, I can grant some accommodation. No? Pero kung wala na making email and then you just turned it late, no, it's unfair not to give you any deductions. No? Kasi other people naman are also busy like you guys, but they manage to turn in the paper on time. And if you're already submitting it late, take time to really turn in a good paper. Diba? Parang really take it seriously. Late ka na nga, you already have deductions. Might as well bawiin mo yung deductions by the quality of your work. Not just submit it for to tick the box. Discussion boards, kung gusto nyo bumawi, no, if you feel you got a low grade here, no, aside from, of course, doing a better job in assignment 2 and then the final integrated output, discussion boards. I will not grade per post. No, there are, I think, 9 or 10 discussion boards. I will grade it as an aggregate. I'll determine to what extent you're participating, the substance, no, kasi some people, no, alam ko naman when you're just writing something just to write something or when you're really being thoughtful. No? So obvious naman. I may not grade that greatly. No? So you might not get the full 20%. But if you manage to write in all discussion boards and in all of them make sense, most likely you will get the full 20%, 100. So sayang pa din. That accounts for 20%. So before I jump to module 4, I'll spend the next 10 minutes or so talking about some general feedback. No? But again, if you have questions, no, you can email me. No? Some notes lang, no, because some people made some mistakes. No? Ito lang, labor, employment, and income. No? It may be counterintuitive, but unemployment actually among the poor is actually lower. They already found this out before. No? There are studies. Parang it's counterintuitive kasi parang, huh? Really? Pero if you think about it, and their main finding was, their main theory was, and it's correct, no? Those who are poor, no? They cannot afford to be unemployed. So whatever, it's really those who are better off or more well off, no? Are the ones who can take their time. Ayaw ko to, siguro, sige, I'll wait for until the next job. No? But the poor, no, whatever it is, no, kapit sa patalim or whatnot, whatever they can get their hands on, usually they have to just grab it and take it. So that's the reason why usually unemployment is among the poor. But again, the quality of the jobs is the next question. The labor force, mind you, equals the number of employed and unemployed. So those who are not looking for a job are not part of the labor force. So the number of employed and unemployed. So unemployment, as you know, no, kayo, you are not unemployed. You are not employed, but you are not unemployed because you are not looking and available for a job. Do not divide unemployment by total population. No, some people made the mistake of dividing yung numerator nila is unemployed people and then denominator sa total population. No. You only divide it against those who are your universe. There's the labor force. Low labor force is not necessarily participation, is not necessarily bad. No? There might be some reasons for this, especially if it's a younger population. Ito, I also noticed, no, some people conflating subsistence poor and poor. No? The subsistence poor, you cannot add that to the total number of poor kasi they are a subset of the poor. No? And food poverty is not the same as experiencing hunger or food shortage, no? Kasi yun nga, no, in the case of San Remigio, malnutrition or family experiencing hunger was pretty low, even if poverty rates and subsistence rates were high. Kasi these are, it's basically the income a person or family needs to buy, no, food. But if they have food available in their backyard or whatnot, or from their neighbors, so diba, pwede pa rin. So it's just the amount commensurate to what one would need to spend for food. So it's not necessarily one and the same. Kaya nga iba yan. If you really uh, you'll see the difference in the San Remigio case. Proportion or percentages are king, no? That's why I was surprised. Some people just resorted to magnitude, no, numbers, no. In social science, no, it's usually important, no. Yes, you can use magnitude, but usually what's more useful is really proportion, kasi it's relative to something, no. Issues are always, kaya if you notice, no, all the things we've been covering, no, HDI, HPI, all of them are rates. Incidence this, incidence that, divided by this per 100 population. Kasi gusto mo as relative to what? Kasi for example, no, in absolute terms, so people who experience hunger in the Philippines, 100 people lang against 100 million. Versus a small country where there's 100 people hungry pero 1,000 lang yung population nung kino-cover mo, di ba? So it's usually have to make it relative to something to be able to have a better analysis. To put it into context. And then, for this particular exercise, then all the more that you can rank them. No? Pwede, ito yung mga pinakamatataas yung percentages. Maybe these are the main problems. Or, parang mas mababa, mas mataas, let's say Marikina, no? Mas mataas yung poverty incidence nito than the rest of NCR, no? Might be a problem. So pwedeng ganun, no? So percentages allow you to compare and put things into context. And include data if you're talking about it. Some groups I noticed na parang, there's a problem with this. Tell me, no? Of course I know the slides, but tell me, it's a paper eh. When you're writing a paper, assume that your audience doesn't have access to the data. It's asking you to present and prove it, no? It's because it's only blank percent. Include it. Be careful when computing. No? I saw many erroneous proportions, no? Because of wrong denominator. No? Yung iba, they divided the number of kids not attending school with the total population. Or yun nga, with the unemployed people divided by total population. So medyo hindi eh. Again, ask, no? Again, I kept reminding you guys, if you want to consult, if you want to ask me something, ask me. No? Or shoot me an email or Google. No? Google it. Especially for, I think, Marikina, kasi San Remigio yata and Saguday, or at least San Remigio, they already... the deck, no, the excerpts, no, the excerpted deck that I provided already came out with percentages, proportions. Yung Marikina yata wala. On the intervention side, no, governments are not in the business of providing employment. This is a common mistake, no, and it's a very, it's really within the domain of the private. Yes. Unfortunately, in many LGUs, no, especially far-flung areas, mga rural areas, government is a main employer. No? Pero that should not be the case. Government's role, especially in Metro Manila, let's say Marikina, they are not supposed to give jobs away. That's the domain of the private sector. They have to create an conducive environment for the private sector to come in. So we focus on what we call in economics, enabling environment. The things we talked about in Module 3, no? Investment attractiveness, cost of doing business, factors of production, cost of utilities, how easy it is to get permits, no? the pillars of competitiveness, diba? Infrastructure, kumusta ba? Utilities, etc. By the way, education is free and provided by the national government. But yes, local governments can supplement that by capital outlay. They can build classrooms for DepEd. Ang implementor kasi ng education is DepEd, no? National. It's not the LGU. Or they can provide materials or supplies, no? Through what we call a special education fund at in each LGU. But yes, no, I like the fact that some of you said, no, yes, let's probably ask the LGU to subsidize transportation and food. No? Maybe that will incentivize families to go to school. Kasi free naman yung education. It's accessing that's not necessarily free. No? Kasi kailangan may baon or you need pamasahe for that. And mind you, no, to solve poverty now or in the near term, education is not, except if it's TESDA or vocational type, no. But if it's basic education, that is not a solution for poverty now. Long term, yes. So more often than not, if you see problems with poverty incidents, then you combine. No, it can be parallel. No? So you can address educational needs of kids, especially if there's poor school enrollment or participation. And at the same time, no, find ways to improve incomes. No? By, let's say, focusing on enabling environment, or government should not provide jobs, but it can facilitate job matching, no? Like mga job fairs, etc. Ito, no, don't force people to be entrepreneurs. Of course, that can be one option. Pero, kunyari, like ako, if you tell me, oh, I'll give you capital, create your own business, I'm not an entrepreneur. I don't know how to run a business or hindi ko type. So that is an option, but that should not be the only option. But you can offer that to those who are interested. So wag mong pilitin, not everyone can be an entrepreneur. I myself, no, convince me, takot ako magnegosyo. So, not everyone can be an entrepreneur. And be more thoughtful and specific when proposing interventions. I saw things like the LGU should provide or give them basic capabilities. What? Well, is super motherhood? And at the same time, how and what? No? Or the LGU should focus on this problem. Yes, but how and what should they do? Ito, I also saw this, no? Some people, even if ito muna. Some people conflated the term informal settlers, no, with informal sector. Pag sinabi informal sector, those are people or entities, no, that run businesses that are not registered. Mga fishbowl vendor. Or nauso nung pandemic, yung mga Facebook marketplace, bibenta ng ulam and whatnot. That's the informal sector. Informal settlers, you know, it has to do with, do they have the legal rights, paperwork, rental or whatnot, or the actual land ownership to stay on the land that they're residing in. So magkaiba yun. And again, I also saw that people, even students, so even if I already explained this in one of my FAQs, no, when I discussed the guidelines for Module 2, some students conflated, kaya nga magkaibang indicator siya. No? There's an indicator for houses with makeshift materials and houses with yung yung tenure status, no? Whether it's formal or informal. Magkaiba yun. Informal settlers are those who are occupying land illegally. Walang paalam sa government or that encroach, no, sa isang private property. No? And they can have, especially if they're living there for quite some time, they can have concrete houses. You see this in some squatter settlements in Manila especially, or Cebu, no? And yung makeshift materials, that's different. Again, there may be overlaps in many cases, but it's not one and the same. So yung iba, ginawa nila interchange. No? The intervention that they proposed was for uh, informal settlements, pero ang intervention nila was for uh, improving the physical household, no? The housing characteristics. So, hindi yun match. So again, make sure the interventions match the diagnosis. No? Sometimes kasi okay, galing, no? The paper is okay na. These are the three main areas based on the data, the three main areas that the LGU should focus on. Tapos pagdating sa interventions, may mga pinapropose na interventions that are outside of the three na talagang, uy, wait, what happened? No? Hindi na masyadong na-address yung three, and worse, lumayo pa. Introduce another element. So it focused then. Diba? Yun nga. Again, imagine you are part of the local government and you're given this, you focus on the data. Diba? Evidence-based tayo. So yan, some notes, technical notes lang, substantive notes. On writing, layout, and organizing, and that's the reason why I forced you guys to only to put your thoughts in 2 pages. Kasi I want you to practice being more cohesive in terms of writing, have a better flow, etc., etc. No? Brevity is always important. Of course, if you're doing PhD, sometimes professors would like verbose, but no, good writing, especially if you want to work in the development world, no, it's brevity is good. Number one, it's a paper, not an essay. Ito naman, I'm not saying it has to be super short. No? It's not an essay question. It's still a paper. So it still has to look and feel like a paper. No? Na it's something that, may structure, intro, etc., etc. But no need for a long intro. Don't tell me what the point about CPMS. Alam na natin yan. No? I already taught you that. No? Don't tell me. No. So no need for long intro. The CBMS is a tool for... No. We don't need that. Sayang yung space ninyo. Especially if you have a very long intro, no? Or diagnosis part. As discussed, the guide questions are just that, no? Not necessarily the outline of the paper. Yung iba kasi, yun nga, yung guide question ko 3 and then they divided. So what happens is they keep repeating the development challenge kasi nga they have to when they're citing. Pwede naman kasi, and I like what others did, no? Here's the major problems. Sinundan agad, no? One problem, one solution, or a package of solutions. Ganun din, no? Next problem, and then ganun. Hindi na yung paulit-ulit, no? For a 50-page paper, 100-page paper, pwede yun kasi people tend to forget. But if it's a 2-page paper, no, don't repeat what you said in page 1. Don't repeat it in page 2 kasi nasabi mo na kagad eh. So follow instructions also, no? Also additional reminders from synchronous sessions. So I mentioned that this was supposed to test your thinking, your thoughtfulness, no? At iba yung question na what did you think the LGU did versus what did the LGU do? Some students resorted to researching ano bang ginawa ng LGU. That was not the point of the paper. Diba? It was to force you to think. No? What I like, no, some people did, no? They did both, no? They now researched what the LGU did, which was optional. And then sabi nila, ay, ito medyo kulang pa. Maybe they should improve by adding more. So okay naman yun. To use that to set as a setup for your, for what you want to explain or to propose. So again, if you don't attend synchronous classes, you are still responsible for the material covered. And break apart paragraphs. No? A 2-page paper can't have just 2 or 3 paragraphs. Yung iba parang the whole second page, just one long paragraph. That's not proper writing. So write well and break it up into, and including headers can make it easier to read. And I like the headlines approach to creating sections. No? San Remeo needs to blah, blah, blah. Diba? Headline. Diba? Needs to improve its blah, blah, blah. And again, avoid repetition. Data presented earlier is repeated for short papers. And I'll add one more. No need to include, no need to copy paste whatever's on the table that's on the deck, no, on the paper, sayang again yung space. No? Kasi alam na natin yun. All right, any questions? Okay, seeing none. Okay, outline today's session. So we'll introduce Module 4. We are already on Module 4. So, but Module 4 is long. So we'll take around 4 to 5 weeks to do this. No? And then it's already May. No? May might be more exciting and more practical. No? We'll cover project development tools. No? Log framing, causal analysis, etc. So we might do some interactive exercises there. And mind you, by the way, no, before you turn in your homework 2, no, I will set up consultation sessions. So we will convert one session, and I'll announce this next week, no, one session to just pure consultations. Okay, so module 4, no, to introduce. So let's go back to NEDA, no? You saw this already, no? I'm not sure if I already, no, you already got a glimpse of the PDP, no? The Philippine Development Plan, all even way back on module 1. No? Each government, no, they come up with a medium-term plan at the start of their administration. Kaya to 2017, because it usually takes the government a few months before they're able to finish it. Kasi may consultations then. They talk about participatory development. Government consults external stakeholders as well. So here it's 2017. So come June, no, new administration, they will again prepare a 2023 to 2028 PDP plan. So you've seen this, no, the ambition. So everything is still anchored, no, because we have the long-term vision until 2040. You have the 3 legs, no, which is the social fabric, inequality reducing transformation, and increasing the growth potential. Increasing the growth potential, we discussed that already quite extensively in Module 3, and we tempered the growth-driven agenda by also talking about sustainable development. So we've covered that already. So the ones I've encircled, no, if we had more time, if this is a 1-year course, no, we could have covered everything. No? But here, no, in Module 4, no, the things I encircled are relevant for Module 4. No? And expanding economic opportunities. And one of the most important economic sectors, no, as we'll cover, is agriculture. Diba? 3 sectors siya, as you learn in your economics courses. Agriculture, industry, and services. And we will also cover trade and fiscal policy. No? Not trade, no, but fiscal policy. So on the macro side, we'll focus more on fiscal taxation. No? If you what do you call this? If you attended my talk in the AEA session, no? This was part of it. Fiscal policy. I actually discussed the train law in greater detail. And then Module 4 will also talk about the demographic dividend. No? We'll talk about reproductive health, population, and demography. No? And then we'll cap Module 4 by talking about how, again, going back to my earlier points, now, what's the role now of private sector in development? And see, the 4 topics now are aligned with your assignment. So you have 4 groups, no? Thanks to Anika for requesting me to just go ahead and, you know, the groupings will be based on your FIO. Okay naman yun. It's better for me, 4 papers lang to check instead of 6. But other than that, yeah. So it mirrors, no, these 4 topics: agriculture, fiscal policy, RH, and then build, operate, transfer. In infrastructure, that's one of the key sectors where the private sector can have a role. Okay. So just to set the stage no, for Module 4. So pasok naman yung ating policy discussions dun sa PGP. Okay. So agriculture, the agriculture piece is divided into two. No? One is agriculture, broadly speaking. The other is agrarian reform or land reform in the countryside. We'll reserve that for next week. No? I want you guys, to the extent possible, to finish reading and going through the agrarian reform material no, before I discuss it. No? Para mas madali nyo ma-absorb yung discussion. Because there's a lot of misconception about agrarian reform, especially from those na, well-meaning. Pero we have to be more objective when we analyze things. Okay, but when during the course of discussing agriculture, we will also be sort of discussing things related to agrarian reform in passing. So why is it significant? Agriculture, what are some of the issues? No, what are some of government's trust? And based on government's trusts, I will discuss some key topics that that I think are very important and that you might find interesting and useful. One is food security versus self-sufficiency. The other is, again, importance of scale. Sorry, I forgot to include that here, no? Which speaks to land reform or the issues raised against land reform, and agribusiness and value chains. The last slide on value chains, so that might be very important for your NSTP classes or engagements. Okay, let's start. So agriculture, there's only 8 of you, so I hope that you won't be shy and share your ideas, even if you haven't gone through the material yet in class 2. So why is agriculture important? Why are we even discussing agriculture? You can type in the chat box or you can unmute yourselves. Why is agriculture important? Is it important, but why am I discussing agriculture? Required lang ba for all SOCSI courses, or is there something else? Why is it important? Do you think it's important? And why? Bricks, go ahead.
It's sort of like the baseline or parang starting point of every nation po, sir.
That too, no? If you go back to Rosto, yes, it's Rosto. No? Agriculture is the starting point for all, definitely. Oh, go ahead, Francis.
Hello, sir. Sorry pa. Agriculture is important because it is the key towards our food security.
That too, of course, it's synonymous with food. No agriculture will starve to death. Good point. What else, guys?
Sir.
Go ahead, Claire, then Sophia.
Sir, I think agriculture is important because a lot of Filipinos who are part of marginalized or part of the agricultural sector.
Very good. I have a slide on that actually. Yes. Go ahead. Next, Sophia, I think you were raising your hand.
Sir, I have the same answer as Claire.
All right. Perfect. Anyone else before we go to the slides? All right. Sige. Correct, no? So one is here, no? It is still an important economic sector, no? And as mentioned by Bricks, everyone, no, in the past, no. The first slide, this is share in GDP. So as you've noticed, no, and you're probably familiar with this sort of trend, no, in more recent years, no, it wasn't like this before, no. Before, agriculture share, especially when we were not as modernized as are developed. We're still developing, but we were less developed before. Agriculture share was much, much higher. No? So everyone starts with agriculture as the backbone of their, some countries, even developed ones, no, still have, like Australia, New Zealand, Netherlands, Meron pa. Pero ito, no, it's still, no, yeah, you might argue that no, it's becoming less important in terms of its contribution to GDP, but that's still 10%. So that's still something. No? And later on, no, I'll show you another slide, no, which basically says, yes, even if technically it only accounts for 10%, no, it also influences other sectors. And other sectors like food manufacturing rely on agriculture. But if you look at this, all the more that it becomes apparent that agriculture is very, very important. Before, no, just 10 years ago, or well, 13 years ago, 1 out of 3 people relied on agriculture for livelihood. Now it's gone down, but still, it's still 1 out of 4. So you line up all the Filipinos, 1 out of 4 rely on agriculture, fishery, or forestry for their livelihood, to eat, gain income and eat. So it's very important. It's still an important source of economic output, but more importantly, a source of employment. And this is what Sophia and Claire mentioned. No? Poverty is a rural phenomenon, and the countryside is synonymous with agriculture. Before, no, it was 3 out of 4 people are residing in the rural areas. Now it's gone down a bit, but it's still roughly the same. So 7 out of 10 or 3 out of 4 Filipinos who are poor, no. So ito, kita niyo yung graphic here, no. In 2018, no, and it's gone down, which is good. 2021 nga lang, we don't have the data now in terms of urban and rural, no? Because poverty went up, at least the first half. 5 million Filipinos, no, residing in cities were poor, no? Pero more than double were residing in rural areas. So poverty is a rural phenomenon, and because agriculture has low incomes, etc., etc. So the most marginalized are in agriculture. And then there's also a graphic, no, that I should have included in the slide, but it's on Canvas, no. The Philippine Statistics Authority, well, the Philippines in general, there's a law that actually officially recognizes 12, I think it's 12, marginalized groups. No? They call them basic sectors. So there's a law, no? Republic Act 8425. That law actually created the National Anti-Poverty Commission. Kaya kabisado ko because I worked there for 5 years. There are 12 basic sectors there. And then PSA tries to estimate the poverty incidence per basic sector. The basic sector, that's the indigenous peoples, farmers, fisherfolk, senior citizens, workers in the informal sectors, persons with disability, women, children, etc., etc. So poverty incidence is highest, no, for farmers and fisherfolk, more than the national average. So really, poverty is synonymous with it. Kaya nga, if you want to really help lift people out of poverty, one important sector is agriculture. And given the pandemic, it is the bright spot now. Let's go back to 2020 kasi I really like this slide prepared by Dr. Aldaba, who used to be the Dean of Social Sciences in Ateneo. It was the only sector, no? I mean, compared to agri and industry and services, it was the only sector that was thriving, that could continue to operate substantially and thrive, no, during the pandemic. Kaya nga tingnan nyo, during the pandemic, the share actually went up. Kasi bumagsak yung industry and services. So here, no, it's the bright spot now. No? Not only is it, possible during a pandemic, kasi na, obviously social distancing, you can do that in farms. Sa mga factories and offices, medyo mahirap, especially if you're dikit-dikit yung cubicles. No? Here, no, you might say, ay, konti lang naman, sir, ang share, no? And yeah, this is kind of similar to this one, but But look at this, no? So, sabihin mo ng 8 to 10% yung share niya in terms of GDP. Hindi pa yata nasama yung forestry dito. The thing is, there's still, well, aside from employing 10 million people, which is still a lot, no? If you notice, this is only agriculture and fishery, no? Basic production of crops, livestock, and fish, no? Harvesting of fish, no? Or catching fish. But it's not only, if you are, the argument here is it's not only 8%. Because, no, there's the big but, no? Because other sectors actually rely also on this sector. How can you have food manufacturing without agri? So without fish, you won't have canned sardines. Kasi ito yung trick dito, no. When you compute agriculture share in GDP, you're only talking about agri production. Walang processing, ha. If you're converting, if it's bottled or canned sardines, pasok na yan sa no, sa industry kasi processed na yan. So ito same, no, banana chips, whatnot, no, kasi pasok yan, no. So it's you can add both, no. So 15% or more are reliant on agriculture, no, and plus 1 million employed. Hindi pa nagtatapos dyan, no. Of course, the agriculture sector also needs financial services. So part of it, no, is also dependent on banking for agriculture. Utilities, obviously, yes. Trucking services, yes. Logistics, and obviously supermarkets, they sell food that's linked to agriculture. So ang dami niyang, and this is the concept, no, you guys are MECO students, you have management classes. You know, you already know the term linkages, no, forward and backward linkages, no, or vertical and horizontal, di ba? Alam niyo yan. So think of this as vertical, no. Pag sinabi mo kasing forward multiplier, ito na yon, no. So whatever I produce, no, it will be sort of sold, no, and may mamaya this will become more clear, no, when we talk about value chains. It will be bought, no, by a food processor, no, and that will create jobs and additional economic output. Kaya meron siyang multiplier, no? So that one piece of crop or one pig, sabihin mo na for lack of a better, no, one pig, no, may forward multiplier because that the pig can be sold and packaged as tocino and then or whatever pork in supermarkets. Eventually it becomes whatever sisig and crispy pata and whatnot, no. Sorry if you're salivating now. So that's the forward multiplier, no. It can create economic outputs and additional employment, no, as it goes through different chains, no. Backward naman, no, there are companies that will sell to the agriculture, sector, no, mga seed companies, fertilizers, mga lupa, mga equipment, etc. That will have a multiplier, no. They also affect other sectors. Yan lang naman ibig sabihin ng multiplier, no. The effect isn't limited to what they produce, but it has spillover effects. That's the concept of multiplier. So malaki. It's nothing to scoff at. And again, still, no, even last year, no, both 2020 and 2021, and I stole this from Dr. Abito, which I also posted on Canvas, no, during the last quarter's Eagle Watch briefing. No. It's also a bright spot because, again, given the performance of our government, no, you see Secretary Dar, no, really solid guy. No. GDP, sayang, no, GDP for agri, they call it the GVA, gross value added of agri, fisheries, and forestry, should have gone up or at least remain the same, if not for the Africa swine flu or fever and the Odette, no, at the end of the quarter, the calendar year. Sayang, no? Because here, kita nyo, palay, corn, crops, actually crops grew. Traditionally, hindi. Usually, palay production, corn production, that has been on a downward trend already. No? So, and then for the rice tarification group, if the agri group will indeed choose rice tarification act, no? As an aside, no, Shell Habito was saying it actually defied the doomsayers on retail rice tarification. Kasi you would expect, ay, ayaw na namin kasi may importation na, we will produce less. No, but you see, palay production actually went up. Kasi di ba yung rice tarification law, it's two things, no? Importation, but at the same time, you're providing support to modernize, increase the yields of rice. I'll stop there, lest I further help the agri group. So yun, livestock was not good, no? Pero it's the bright spot now, especially during the pandemic. So if you can really focus on agriculture, no, and you will pull more poor people out of poverty because again, 3 out of 4 or 7 out of 10 now, medyo bumaba na, are in the rural side, relying on agriculture. These guys. But there are key issues. No? Agriculture has been the laggard for the longest time, the last 10, 20 years. No? And I provided the paper of Dr. Roel Briones, who actually used to teach in Ateneo, Department of Economics. He's now, I don't think he's teaching anymore. He's now a researcher, a consultant, and he does research also for PIDS, no? the government think tank, the Philippine Institute for Development Studies. So based on this paper and top of your head or based on the PDP, what do you think are the key issues that has made agriculture weak, no? Or the lagging sector? What do you guys think? Even if it's top of your head, what are some of the key issues? No? There's a long list of issues, and I'll go through them to summarize what's in Dr. Briones' paper. Oh, go ahead, Francis.
Sir, low budget towards research and development, and because of that, many people from rural areas didn't see farming as a feasible job for that have an opportunity for growth. Because
Yeah, that's correct. No, I mean there's two things there, no, that you were mentioning: low budget, and three things: no, low budget going to R&D, and then it's no longer enticing, no? Kasi wala nang pera sa agri masyado, no? It's no longer enticing to people, especially the young ones. Good point. Points, I should say. Anyone else? Di pa nabasa? It's okay, but just top of your head if you haven't read the paper yet, Dr. Briones. Okay, sige, ako na lang. It's okay, just try covering, no, this part. No? It's a short paper, no? You don't have to read the entire paper, and you can stop before the interventions part. But it's very interesting before the recommendations. So here we talked about, you guys know the total factor productivity. It's the productivity of land, labor, and capital. Yun nga, it's the lack of mechanization. No? It's very romanticized. No? You go to the countryside, Araro, Calabao, and you even have like photos. No? Very romanticized, people riding on the Carabao, di ba? Pero yun, that's not good for productivity and even for incomes. No? Kasi the lack of modernization, machinery, no? Aside from it being burdensome to those who engage in agriculture or making it super hard for them. No? It produces lower yields. It's less efficient. Yung total TFP lang naman is all about efficiency. More bang for the buck lang naman ang total factor productivity. If you distill its core, it's bang for the buck. Are you producing more with what you have, with the factors of production? And again, we'll cover this next time. And part of it also is land is not as productive because you're fragmenting lands. No, many crops, to have better yields, more efficient yields, no, need larger tracts of land, larger tracts of contiguous land. But due to land reform, no, which spliced up the land, no, this is no longer possible. So that contributes to poor productivity, especially the land part, kasi nga land, labor, capital. Limited access to credit and insurance, no, banks or financial institutions are averse, no, to lending to farmers and fisherfolk. Takot sila, ba? Walang credit history, wala kang collateral, or parang, or hindi, mahirap yan. So baka they won't repay. No? And again, agriculture is a risky bet. No? And unfortunately, even land bank, which is supposed to be government, which is a government financial institution, no? It's also averse. Of course, not as averse as the private ones. Poor rural infrastructure, no, the connecting farm to markets, inadequate irrigation, also inadequate post-harvest facilities, no. So both of these combined, no, it leads to a lot of spoilage, no. Your vegetables that you get that come from Baguio, no, roughly mga 30% yata is due to spoilage, no. Wala silang cold storage facilities or drying for palay, for example. No, if you go to the provinces, especially let's say Pangasinan, no, which is closer, no, if you drive to the north, no, you'll see yung joke dito is you'll see solar dryers, no. Basically, they dry their palay on the highway. Tama, no, and solar dryer. So it leads to a lot of losses, no. Spoilage, no, it's inefficient, and the losses translate to lost incomes. So this is a big piece also. Yung mga nabubulok kasi nga no refrigeration, mahal din kasi. Diba? Weak extension services, no. But what we mean here is when you say extension services, these are technical advisory services provided by the local government. Kasi especially in the rural areas, no, their rural areas have the municipal agriculture officer. Or sometimes, no, kahit city yan, meron din silang agri officer. Sometimes they're not too knowledgeable or basic lang alam na, so they can provide good advice to the farmers. Or some states, the model also it was supposed to be in theory, no, the state universities and colleges in the rural areas, no, they're supposed to have agri programs that the professors will provide technical advice to the farmers. Ay hindi nangyayari, it's weak, no, either kulang sa personnel, kulang sa budget, etc. And here's the point made earlier, no, relatively lower budget as well. But in recent times it's been increasing, but the problem is we keep on devoting it to palay and corn. Kasi may politics involved din. No? Less on other crops, no, that can fetch higher incomes, and less on public goods, no, like research and development. No? Minsan mga fertilizers here, there, no. Pero limited R&D, no, as mentioned earlier, no. And that also informs this. Kulang sa know-how, so kulang din yung matuturo nito. Agrarian reform issues, again, that goes back to fragmentation of land, which we'll discuss in greater detail next week. And ito, no, because of the twofold problem there, no. Of course, kids now are more digitally savvy. They live in an online world. They grow up, no. Tablet dyan, kahit rural, kahit countryside, no. Kids grow up connected to the internet, no, or in an online world. At the same time, there's not a lot of money to be made in agriculture. So it's not enticing for the kids. Wala nang ang pera. It's mano-mano, it's manual labor. It's not your nice, sexy, digital online thing. Diba? Not attractive. So this is a problem. We might run out of farmers in the long run. And the last, no, and this wasn't included in the diagnostic part of the PDP, no, in terms of agri. Dr. Bionis argues, and this is a point made by many in the past, no? Even up to now. The Philippines has traditionally been under a protectionist regime. So yung rice tariffication law, when we joined WTO, we kept telling WTO in the late 90s and even in recent years, so before the RTL was passed, no, yes, eventually we will tariffize, or we will convert the quotas of rice into tariffs. No? Susunod na kami. We will be more open to imports. Pero we kept just kicking the can down the road. And what did that do? And even for corn, it bred complacency. The problem was, if you keep sheltering or protecting industries here, no, from foreign or from greater competition, it will breed complacency, both for government and the actual farmers. So tingnan nyo ngayon, the good thing is, with the rice tariffication law, no, of course there are pros and cons. No? Now government has to step up because it has to support farmers naman. No? So may ganon. No? It no longer breeds complacency. No? Everyone is now on their toes. So yeah, I will try to prevent myself from talking too much about RTL, because I might be helping the group that's doing that, if the agri group is doing that. So now we go to Secretary Dar. Secretary Dar is one of my top 3 favorite cabinet secretaries in this administration. There are a lot of bad appointments. No? So I also like Secretary Lopez and Secretary Villar. Of course, Villar is more controversial, especially because of the parents, but he's done a pretty good job in terms of the infrastructure. See, Willie Dar is a technocrat. No, he's not a politician. He has a PhD. He got his PhD from the US in horticulture. He's a real geeky scientist. And if you, sorry, not to be honest, if you hear him speak, no, you might fall asleep. He's that kind of person, no, very focused on data. He's not a politician. No, he means well, and he thinks, which is important if you're a cabinet secretary. So he has 8 key thrusts. And just to quickly go over this, no, that's already in your canvas. No, there's a short video that DA has produced on this. Si Manong Willidar, no, nice guy, walang ka-ere-ere, very well-meaning. Modernization. Better yields, better incomes, no, if you modernize. Diba? And then, with the rice tariffication law and with other things, no, the AFMA, other laws, policies, and budgets, no, you can provide more equipment, more, diba, we covered this already in module 3, higher than Dumar. You introduce advanced technology, you'll have better growth and will make things more efficient, especially agri. You go to the Netherlands, you go to the US, mechanized stuff. So, sila, they can compete, better yields, etc. Ngayon nga, meron ng precision agriculture, data-driven, You guys are taking up or have taken up yung di ba? What do you call this? Operations management, if I'm not mistaken, or you will take that eventually. No, it's optimization. They measure things every so often. May nakakabit ng machinery, and they do the number crunching to optimize things. How much water to put, how much fertilizer. So very, very precise. It's a science, actually. And industrialization of agriculture is key. You'll earn more money, and we'll talk about this later in the last slide, if you engage more into processing rather than just being happy with the basic crop. So food processing, adding value is key for better incomes. And to be more competitive domestically and globally. So alongside that is also trying to sell abroad. Selling abroad is good because, again, it earns greater money, but at the same time, it sort of improves, sectorally, it improves the standards, the quality of goods. Here, as an antidote sort of to CARP, the DA is now enticing, with loans, etc., enticing people or cooperatives or associations to actually come together and propose projects for contiguous pieces of land, no? Combining lots. No? So consolidation. So because that is more efficient and much better. No? Better yields, better incomes. Infra development, that's pretty explanatory, no? Connecting farms, and including irrigation, no? And logistics as well. Higher budget, and I may add, no, higher budget, but if you increase the budget, let it go to the right sectors. Tama na yung palay and corn. No? Well, palay now has the rice tariffs, no, as their source for the mechanization support or modernization support. So you should focus more on the other crops, the more higher value crops, or agribusiness. Entice the cooperatives, for example, to engage in food processing and agribusiness. Obviously, legislative support needed is some laws need to be amended, like the Agri-Agra law, for example, no, to expand, for example, what they consider as agri or fisheries. And the number 8 is just basically this is more meant internally for them. DA, the roadmap development is paramount. Although I am a bit so about this number 8 paradigm. Kasi roadmap means lang naman, we have the coconut. What will we do with coconut? No? Let's chart a blueprint for the coconut sector, no? From planting all the way to production, and then to processing, and then to selling, etc. The problem with this is Filipinos are very good. The Philippine government is usually very good when it comes to planning and doing plans, blueprints. Ang ganda, no? Ang ganda pa ng layout, ang ganda ng graphics, etc. But more often than not, it's the execution where we fall short of, as a country, no? Our government. So yun sometimes I'm worried now another plan, a medium-term plan for this or that. Now sometimes it's needed naman. Okay to as long as they really follow it, no? And it's realistic. So this is a question mark for me, no? But the value there is if they really will execute their plans. Sorry if I'm being skeptical or cynical sometimes. Ito, no, I heard someone talk about food security earlier. And this is an important thing, important topic. And people conflate the two. And this became very important in the last few years, no? Especially with the rice tarification law and with the recent Africa swine flu, no? The pig pandemic, no? The pandemic affecting hogs. Sabi nga nila, ivermectin might work for the pandemic, ASF, not COVID. So ito, I ask you guys, no? Even if you haven't covered this on Canvas, what's the difference between being food secure and being self-sufficient? What's the difference? What's the difference? Anyone? Just one. Or guess lang. No guesses? Sige, kahit one person lang. Yes, Claire, go ahead.
Sir, I'm not sure, pero I guess food security is parang everyone has access to food, and then self-sufficient is parang you're able to produce food for yourself.
So what's the difference?
Food security is like for everyone, and then self-sufficient is like sarili mo lang.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Sige. That's partly correct. No? And the main difference really is the source. Yes, you are absolutely correct. No? Food security doesn't distinguish between domestic production and imported stuff. So that's the main difference. It's the source. That's one. So food security is mostly for all, sana, no? More or less. No? It's supposed to be for the general population. The general population has access to. Pag sinabi mong access, it doesn't mean meron lang, no? Yes, it's available, but it is affordable. People can physically get it, no? So, there's logistics, there's infra involved. No? Kasi baka mamaya, yes, there's food there, no? It's affordable, pero it's hard for me to buy it or to get to it. Access was a bit worrying, especially during the first few months of the pandemic. But we kind of adapted. And using, no? Kasi useless naman if there's food and the people are not eating it, no? Or consuming it. No? And there's stable supply. No? You cannot say na it's food secure, kaya nga secure, di ba? Stable yung supply. Kasi kung intermittent lang, even if you tick all the other 3 boxes, then it's not secure, no? Kasi hindi siya sustainable. Self-sufficiency naman is we don't need to import. We produce what we need. The problem with self-sufficiency is sometimes it may not be available. Kulang. Kulang siya. There's a shortage. No? That's why we need to import. Or we may be able to produce it, but actually it's expensive if we produce it ourselves. May ganyang cases, no? Instead of, even if you impose tariffs na, no? Imported stuff sometimes is more cheaper than producing it on our own. So that's the next question. If you produce it, is it affordable to the consumers? Yeah. Are people consuming it, and is the supply stable? No? So availability and stability are interrelated because you want it available, you want it there in a sustained manner. So there is a tension always, no? Kasi let's take the case of Singapore. No? I may have to refer again to the rice tarification law, but I'll try not to. So Singapore, for example, Singapore is a very small city-state country, and they have limited arable land. But they are food secure. They are not self-sufficient, but they are food secure. Kasi they can provide their population with food that's affordable, that's available, that has stable supply. So it's not necessary. So the point here is for governments, you go for food security. It's very romantic or idealistic to think that let's shut our borders, let's produce the food that we need. Mali yun. Kasi what if it's more expensive? Then you're penalizing consumers. Diba? What if the supply is not adequate? Then again, you're penalizing the consumers. Diba? So this was the main issue during the rice tarification law. But the rice tarification law, no? And any kind of importation, especially when it comes to agriculture, there is always a trade-off. That's the problem. There's a tension between producers and consumers. The consumers might benefit, lower prices, great, better supply, more supply, walang shortage, but sometimes those who produce them, no, might suffer more. So may trade-offs yan. May trade-offs yan. So I will not talk na more about RTL. I wanted to talk more about, ito na lang, ibang issue na lang. This tension is more apparent now also with the ASF. Kasi what happened, classic economics, lower supply, di ba? With other things remaining constant, no? With demand remaining constant, lower supply will push prices up. Di ba? Obvious naman, a law of supply and demand. Whether you shift the supply curve or not, di ba? Ito parang shift na to, supply curve. What happened was, and ito, no, so some time ago, no, no, ito, no, I sort of rejiggered this article. I like copy pasting from whatever, no. So ginawa ko dito, I sort of organized it more, no. So the good thing here really is what happened was supply went dramatically low. No, the problem was pork production wasn't enough kasi they had to kill pigs that were infected, no, and they had to, or they died themselves because of the flu. Prices shot up to 360 kilo. You ask your parents, no, this happened in 2020, tail end of 2020, also 2021 also. Grabe, no? 2021. Mas 2021. 360, 400 parang beef na. So people started buying beef instead of kasi konti lang yung difference. Or chicken. No? So yun. No? But so what happened? Well, government was forced to, what do we do? No? Of course, farmers were saying, or consumers were up in arms. No? Grabe, no? If you watch the news, no, grabe yung prices. So what they did, no, they issued an executive order, no, saying let's import more. That's the basic thing. So they just basically expanded kasi the way you, in general terms, so the way you trade, no, or open up or close trade is playing around with either tariffs or quotas. Lower tariffs means you entice more importation kasi lower prices, di ba? To sell, no, to people, no? Mas kikita yung importers. Quotas is also the same, no? Allowing more entry, more competition, more supply, ergo lower prices. So that's what government did. So from being relatively self-sufficient with some importation before, no, suddenly prices shot up. We were no longer hog secure or pork secure. Ang hilig pa naman ng Pinoy sa pork, di ba? Sorry if some of you are Muslims here, di ba? Especially Christmas season. Wow, di ba? Pork yan. No? I know people, no, they are okay not to eat beef basta may pork. There are lots of people like that. So what happened was they did that, they opened that up. So, more imports came in. Eventually, gradually, prices went down. So again, government, there's always that tension between, yes, it's always romantic to say, oh, we can produce it ourselves. But the reality is, no. Sometimes pride yan, pride chicken nga, sabi na. It's pride, no, that kung hindi kaya. No? But again, you have to balance interests. No? Sometimes by importing more, no, there can be negative effects sa farmers. So you balance, or you can structure some safety nets, no, to mitigate against things. No? So maybe the RTL group can focus on that as well if you're doing RTL. So that's food security. Romantic masyadong self-sufficiency, especially if it's ito nga, no, even before the rice tarification law, no, palay or yung bigas, no, even if you impose 100% tariffs from rice from Vietnam, Thailand, they were still cheaper than our rice. So you were, for the longest time, you were actually penalizing consumers. And 99% of Filipinos eat rice, no, or rice eaters. You're penalizing consumers by not allowing more importation. Kasi nga, may mga interest din yan, mga palay farmers. So there's always that tension. But mind you, from a development perspective, focus first on food security. No? Ika nga ni Shell Habito, no? Not saying disregard the farmers, pero there are more consumers than producers. And the urban poor, no? Sometimes, ano lang yan, rice with konting ulam or make do with asin or soy sauce. So cheaper rice for them is good. So there's that tension. So go for this first. And you can do it in parallel. No? Again, most countries, they try to achieve self-sufficiency, especially in important crops, staple crops, or even export pa nga. No? Pero yun, at the same time, at the near term, parang ano yan, poverty yan. You solve things near term first while focusing also on the long term. The next one is, again, we'll cover this more in the land reform part. No? You guys know the principle of economies of scale. This is basic economics and even basic management practice principle. And in agriculture, you ask the private companies, mga Cargill, mga Nestle, mga larger land sizes are more productive. and are definitely more cost efficient. Because there's the principle of economics of scale. No? You buy sacks of seeds or fertilizer, that's cheaper, di ba? You buy a tractor, no, if you can use that for a larger piece of land, mas sulit, and versus a small piece of land. So you know this, di ba? Economies of scale. And there's, again, as I mentioned, there's DA has a current thrust on land consolidation. So remember this when we discuss agrarian reform next week. This will be the last topic, no? Agribusiness and value chains. And this is now an important focus now, no? Especially you guys, no? You're management students as well. One way of developing the agriculture sector is not just developing agriculture, but agribusiness, the processing side, the commerce side. I will discuss value chains, and this is an important topic. No? It might be interesting for you guys. But before we do that, no, can someone provide, no, even in the chat box, examples, no, of value chains? What is a value chain? What's a value chain? What is an example of a value chain? This may also be useful for your management classes. What is a value chain? No one? No one knows, or no one can give an example of a value chain? What is a good example? Wala. Okay lang. Sige, sige. We'll get to that later. No? We'll answer that question. I will give examples later. Okay, this is the last slide. Okay. The question here is agriculture. You want farmers to earn more incomes. You want the agriculture to develop more. The question is, so how can farmers, or how can the sector realize increased incomes and make the sector more productive? There are three basic things. One is you shift to high value crops. And DA has been promoting this, no? Kasi traditional crops, no? And of course, you can't fault the old school farmers for just relying on palay and corn. Kasi sanay na sila, di ba? If you're doing this, you've been doing this for the last 50 years, someone tells you, you shift your crop. So yun. Or at the very least, no, shift partially to high value crops. High value crops na naman can mean mga fruits like mangoes, spices, calamansi, okra, whatever, no. Those are high value crops. Basically crops that would give you greater margins. And I think I included some sort of a list there from Rolando Dino, one of the gurus of agribusiness. So one is you shift to high value crops. You get better income. The second way of realizing increased incomes and increased productivity is participate in value chains. So what is now a value chain? So this is a cacao value chain. And I will now distinguish between value chain and supply chain. Siguro you are more familiar. Supply chain kasi is, I have an apple. Sorry, wala palang apple sa Pinas. Meron na yata. I have calamansi. I will harvest the calamansi, and then the supply chain is I'll sell it to traders. As traders will then yan yung step, no, getting it to the market. No, the traders will sell it to the market, and the market will sell it to consumers. It's still the same calamansi. No transformation. Value chain is at each step, or in majority of the steps, no, there's still that underlying supply chain kasi you still need to get the crop to the buyer, no, to the final buyer or the market. Value chain is at every step, or at many steps, most of the steps, you convert the product into something else. You add value. And by converting it into something else, you fetch a higher price. So ito, for example, Yun lang naman yung value, kaya value chain. You add value, value addition to simplify things. So ito, for example, in cacao, no? Forget about this. Huwag na to. Or sige, input companies. Sabihin natin, isama na natin, seeds. Diba? Cacao seeds. Of course, all plants need seeds. No? So, first, the seed, you convert the seed when you plant it into cacao bean. The cacao bean, then you sell it to the traders and processing companies. They convert it into industrial grade cacao blocks, for example, for baking or whatnot. Then it gets converted again when they sell it to food companies who turn this into, let's say, chocolate bars like Hershey's or Chocolate, and then or sa mga restaurants, no? And then finally retailers. Ito na yung supply chain side, all the way to consumers. That's the value chain. So ito, ang sinasabi kasi dito, the thing here is greater incomes are realized the higher you go or the further you go into the value chain. The food companies get greater margins than the processing companies, than the farmers. And ito yun, no? This is proof. Oxfam did a study, no? So basically, this chart just shows what percent of the price of a chocolate bar, a final chocolate bar produced, no, by, let's say, Hershey's, what percent of that goes to farmers? So 3% goes to farmers. Processors earn more than double. Diba? And then retail, supermarket, and manufacturing, then it goes, diba? So the higher you are in the value chain, the more incomes you can gain. So the key lesson here is, yes, participate. If you're a farmer or you're a cooperative or whatnot, you participate in value chains two ways, no? If it's a high value crop, then yes, fine. If you can't do processing, kasi sometimes walang capacity naman yung farmer or the cooperative to do processing, yes, we will sell our crop, basic crop. The good thing, if you are involved in value chains, no, there is steady demand. No? They will keep coming back to you for your raw supply of, let's say, cacao beans. So may stability yung market. So okay yan. So assured ka at least of a steady income and higher income if it's a high value crop. No? If you can, no, especially for cooperatives, usually individual families have a hard time doing this, you add value. So banana chips, let's say, for example, will fetch greater margins than just selling raw banana. No? So ganon. Very basic. No? Cacao, ganon din. So you do value addition if you can. Not everyone can. Not cooperatives can. That's why gusto natin, we want more agribusiness companies and cooperatives that add value. Coconut, that's another great example of a value chain. Coconut, it can have the VCO, no, virgin coconut oil value chain. It can have the buko juice value chain or whatnot. No? It's converting it, and those who convert it, and we've seen this in cooperatives, no, fetch greater incomes than those who just sell the raw produce without any value addition. So the key here, when we talk about value chains, is value addition. And the third and last point here, no, if you want farmers to realize increased incomes or sustain incomes, is make sure there's a market. This is very important for all of you, no, as you engage your NSTP communities. Especially government and sometimes non-government organizations. So there's this tendency, build it, they will come. Or to convert that into business, no, you produce it, you make it, someone will buy it. But it doesn't always happen that way. So many development interventions in the past, especially government, I will teach you dressmaking, tocino making, whatever, achara making, no? Tapos eventually they end up losing money kasi, who do we sell it to? Sorry, bahala ka na sa buhay mo. No. If you're planning to intervene in agriculture and you're trying to help farmers or agribusinesses, also try to help them find buyers, secure buyers. Kaya nga uso ngayon yung interventions that they have purchase orders. They secure agreements between final buyers or middlemen and the producers. Kasi kung walang bibili, whatever, whether that's a basic product or a value-added product, they will just lose money. So wag niyong paasa, no? Kasi in the past, no, I saw this tendency for some NSTP, hindi, let's help them, e-commerce dyan. Okay naman yung e-commerce, diba? Yung, let's help them with techniques on doing this, that. Pero walang intervention on finding buyers. Hindi porket naglagay ka sa Facebook Marketplace or Lazada or Shopee, may bibili na. Marketing is one, but also aggressively seeking out. So remember this, especially. No? Kasi the worst you can do is, sige, gawin mo yan, may bibili, and then walang bumili. So please remember this, not just for your NSTP groups, but also in the future, especially if you go into development or government for that matter, or an NGO or a company, a private company. All right. So that ends our lecture, our summary of the Agri piece. Next week we will cover agrarian reform and then fiscal policy. All right, any questions? I don't see any questions. Going. You're probably eating or hungry or about to eat. So with that, thank you guys. No, I know there's only a few of you, several of you. Thank you again for joining. Hopefully you found some of the things useful. Hoping to see you guys again next week. Now, hopefully we'll have a bigger turnout. Maraming salamat. Have a good dinner. Have a good evening.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Have a good evening.